The Quiet Return. When Daniel Mercer stepped off the plane at Dallas-Fort Worth International Airport, nobody noticed anything unusual about him. He looked like any other American returning home after years abroad, clean-cut, composed, carrying a modest suitcase and wearing the fatigue of long-haul travel. For 5 years, Daniel had lived in Munich, working as an automotive engineer. He had built a reputation there. Disciplined, intelligent, reserved. Back home in Texas, however, people remembered him differently. He had once been warm, even charming. The kind of man who fixed neighbors' fences without being asked. But time changes people in ways that aren't always visible. Homecoming. Daniel drove 3 hours north to the small town of Brookhaven, where his wife Emily lived in a modest white house at the edge of a quiet suburban street. The lawn was trimmed, the porch decorated with hanging plants. It looked like a place untouched by conflict. Emily had stayed behind when Daniel moved abroad. They had agreed it would be temporary, just a few years to build savings, then she would join him. But plans stretched, months turned into years, and distance settled between them, like an unspoken third presence. When Daniel walked through the front door that evening, Emily greeted him with a careful smile. "You're finally home," she said. "Yeah," he replied, setting his bag down. "For good this time." They embraced, but it was brief. Something in the air felt measured, like both of them were following a script they hadn't rehearsed in years. The silence between words. Emily had learned how to live alone. She filled her days with freelance graphic design work, and her evenings with visits from her younger sisters, Lily and Grace. Lily, 19, was studying nursing at a nearby college. She was lively, impulsive, and always laughing too loudly. Grace, 21, was quieter, more observant. She noticed things people didn't say. They often stayed over at Emily's house, sometimes for days at a time. It was their escape, a place where they could be themselves without the weight of their own family struggles. When Daniel returned, the sisters gradually stopped coming around as often. Not because Emily asked them to, but because Daniel's presence made things feel different. He wasn't openly hostile. He was polite, even kind in small ways. But there was a tension beneath his calm exterior, like a tightly wound spring. The seed of doubt. It started subtly. Daniel would ask questions. "Who were you on the phone with? Why did Lily stay over last week? Why didn't you pick up when I called?" At first, Emily answered patiently. She assumed it was natural. He had been gone a long time, and they needed to reconnect. But the questions didn't stop. They multiplied. One evening, Daniel mentioned something that made Emily pause. "I saw your social media," he said casually. "You've been busy." Emily frowned. "What does that mean?" "Just saying," he shrugged. "A lot of pictures. A lot of people." "They're my friends, Daniel." "Yeah," he replied, his tone flat. "I'm sure they are." That night, Emily lay awake, longer than usual. The plan. A week later, Daniel brought up an idea over dinner. "I've been thinking," he said. "It's time you come with me to Germany." Emily blinked. "Really?" "Yeah, I've got everything set up there now. You'd love it." She hesitated. "What about my work? And everything here?" "You can work remotely," he said quickly. "And honestly, what's keeping you here?" Emily didn't answer. Then Daniel added, almost as an afterthought, "Your sisters could come too. There are opportunities there. Better than anything here." Emily looked surprised. "You'd do that?" "Why not?" he said. "They're family." The offer seemed generous. Too generous, perhaps. But Emily wanted to believe it. She told Lily and Grace, and they were thrilled. Traveling abroad, starting fresh, it felt like a dream. Within days, excitement replaced doubt. The departure. 2 weeks later, everything was ready. Daniel said the visas had been arranged. The flights were booked out of Dallas. On the morning of departure, the 4 of them got into Daniel's SUV. Emily locked the house behind her, unaware that she would never return. They drove south, the highway stretching endlessly ahead. Lily chatted about Germany, cafes, museums, winter markets. Grace listened quietly, occasionally glancing at Daniel in the driver's seat. Something about him unsettled her. About an hour into the drive, Daniel frowned. "I think I left an important document at home," he said. Emily sighed. "Seriously?" "It's for the immigration paperwork," he replied. "We can't leave without it." He pulled over near a small town and turned around. "Lily, Grace," he said, I'll drop you at my cousin's place nearby. We'll grab the file and come back. They agreed without question. The first silence. Daniel dropped the sisters at a modest house on a quiet street. His cousin Mark greeted them with a friendly smile. Won't take long, Daniel said. Just wait here. Then he left with Emily. The drive back felt different. Quieter. Emily noticed it first. You okay? She asked. Yeah, he said. But his grip on the steering wheel tightened. When they reached the house, Daniel unlocked the door and gestured for Emily to go inside. I'll grab the file, he said. Emily stepped into the living room, glancing around. Everything looked the same. Then she heard the door close behind her. She turned, and in that moment, something in Daniel's expression changed, completely. The breaking point. What's going on? Emily asked, her voice tightening. Daniel didn't answer immediately. I know, he said finally. Know what? Everything. Emily stared at him. Daniel, you're not making sense. You think I'm stupid? He snapped. All those years I was gone, what did you think I'd believe? Her heart began to race. There's nothing to believe, I didn't do anything. And your sisters? He continued. Always here, always around. They're my family. Yeah, he said bitterly. That's what you call it. Emily took a step back. You're scaring me. But Daniel had already crossed a line in his mind. The unraveling. What happened next unfolded quickly, and yet, in Emily's final moments, it must have felt unbearably slow. The house, once filled with quiet domestic life, became the scene of irreversible violence. And then, silence. The second act. An hour later, Daniel returned to Mark's house. Lily smiled when she saw him. That was fast. Where's Emily? She's waiting in the car, he said. Grace looked at him carefully. Something felt off, but she couldn't place it. Let's go, Daniel added. Inside the house, Mark and his teenage sons exchanged brief glances. They knew more than they said. What followed was not chaos, but coordination, a plan already set in motion. The disappearance. By nightfall, 3 lives had been erased. The town remained quiet. Neighbors watched television. Streetlights flickered on. Nothing seemed out of place. The next morning, a farmer discovered something near a deserted stretch of land. Hours later, authorities found more evidence elsewhere. It didn't take long for the pieces to connect. The investigation. Detective Laura Bennett led the case. She had seen violence before, but something about this felt colder, more deliberate. Phone records, surveillance footage, witness statements, it all pointed in one direction. Daniel Mercer. Within days, Mark's sons were in custody. Under pressure, they confessed. Uncle Daniel said it had to be done, one of them admitted. Why? Bennett asked. He said, they dishonored him. Bennett leaned back in her chair, her expression hardening. Dishonor, she repeated. That's what he calls it. The return. Daniel had already left the country. Back in Germany, he resumed his life as if nothing had happened. But justice has a way of crossing borders. Months of coordination followed, between agencies, governments, and legal systems. And then, one morning, Daniel Mercer was arrested. The reckoning. When he was brought back to Texas, cameras flashed as he was escorted into the courthouse. Reporters shouted questions. Do you regret what you did? Were they guilty of anything? Daniel said nothing. Inside, Detective Bennett watched from a distance. She had one question left, the one that mattered most. Not for the case, but for understanding. The truth that wasn't there. During interrogation, Daniel finally spoke. They weren't innocent, he said. What proof do you have? Bennett asked. He hesitated. Then he said quietly, I just knew. Bennett studied him for a long moment. No, she replied. You didn't know, you decided. The quiet ending. In the end, the case wasn't about secrets uncovered. It was about something far more dangerous, a belief strong enough to replace truth. Emily, Lily, and Grace were never proven guilty of anything, because there was nothing to prove. And Daniel Mercer? He wasn't driven by justice. He was consumed by certainty, and sometimes, that's the most dangerous thing of all.